G'day everybody, Max Wright here, and welcome to another show. So we're going to do a Q&A mainly today. We're going to touch on Bitcoin a little bit and a few other fun things. So go ahead, smash that like button if you like this kind of content, and we'd love to have you as a new subscriber. So first question comes from John Smith, and cometh the hour, cometh the man. Max Wright, you are amazing. Thank you, John, for that. When are you predicting a bull run for Bitcoins versus altcoins? So this chart just here to my left, this is the Bitcoin price, and two lines I want you to look at. That blue line is the trend line for the last 3-4 months. We've held support at that trend line, and you'll see the top green line, that's at $10,480 per Bitcoin, and you'll see the triple top over the last year. We have been rejected by 10,480 for a year now. And so the range is narrowing. Those two lines are going to meet, but when they meet, or slightly before they meet, Bitcoin is going to have to break out of that triangle, simply because the triangle won't exist anymore. So we know that's going to happen, and we will see Bitcoin either break down or up after as that blue line and that top green line meet. So we will have to wait and see what happens to that. Personally, my money, just by a small margin, probably 60-40, maybe 70-30, is I think we're going to break up. And if we do break up, we will break up, I think, to between the $15,000, $20,000 mark. So yeah, that's kind of my call for Bitcoins. And altcoins, I'm not sure. I don't think we're quite in altcoin season yet. Although I am starting to pay more attention to altcoins, FYI. So you might start hearing me give some more content on the altcoin side of things over the next 6 months. Next question by Steve. Great content as always. Thank you. I would greatly appreciate if you give us some thoughts on the Australian, New Zealand property market, banks, food production, etc. After all this tragic violence in the US, it sure seems to be a good part of the world to be living. So yeah, in case you don't know, I'm born and bred Australian, lived there until I was basically 30, spent the last 10 plus years here in the US. So yeah, big soft spot for Australia, love it. And but I'm not an expert on those kinds of things at the moment now. I just haven't paid too much attention to Australian economics and the like. But I would like to draw, the reason I put this question is I wanted to draw attention to this kind of a concept. It's like, sure seems like a good place to be given the violence in the US. So maybe this is a big, I'm going to turn this into a very, very big question, which is, we do see America unraveling, and there's no doubt about it. The racial tensions are high. Yeah, there's a war on everything. There's a war on women, there's a war on people of color, there's a war on transgenders, there's a war on gays, there's a war on everything. Everyone's a victim. Who's the biggest victim? Blah, blah, blah. And America's the most evil country in the world. And, oh yeah, white straight men are the evilest of all. This concept of tearing ourselves apart, to understand this, in fact, I will put a link in the description to a video. Well, a lot of people do not understand is America has been under attack in a particularly subtle and covert way for the last half century. And a lot of things are coming home to roost. To help understand that, my good friend, G. Edward Griffin, author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, and just a very, very important guy in the intellectual space, in my opinion. I've been following him for decades. He did an interview with a gentleman named Yuri, and I can't remember his last name, but basically he's a former KGB whistleblower. For those of you who don't know, KGB was basically the spy network of the Soviet Empire. And he basically came out and in an interview with G. Edward Griffin, I think going back about 30 years ago, he came out and said that what most people don't understand is that of the KGB budget, only 15% is dedicated to spycraft. 85% is dedicated to a much slower, much more corrosive, much more dastardly plan to destroy the United States. And it has several phases. And phase one is the demoralization of the United States citizen. And so what they've done is the KGB put virtually all their budget into taking over media, especially academia, and even in other things like record labels, movie houses, and things like that. And you'll notice the trend over many, many decades whereby America is taught to hate itself. People think just completely false, moronic things to think, like America is built on slavery, and without the slaves, America would be terrible. Now, one of the reasons America is so great is that America was one of the first countries in the world to abolish slavery. There's still many parts of the world that still has it. There's open air slave markets in parts of Africa and the Middle East right now today. And as a result of abolishing slavery, very quickly, within 50 years, the combine harvester was invented. And a whole bunch of automation and capitalism kicked in, and things kind of really took off for America during this period. So, we are taught, you ask a lot of people that Australia is slavery is a horrible blight on America's history. And of course it is. No one could possibly be proud that we participated in it. But the fact of the matter is, it was ubiquitous. Every single country, every single civilization, every single continent, for thousands of years, practiced and participated in slavery. If you were a slave, as unfortunate as that was, you would get down on your hands and knees. And if you had to be a slave, pray to any god you had that you were a slave to America. Because if you were a slave in the Middle East, day one, you get castrated. They did not want that gene pool replicating. Back then, about 50% of people physically castrated just bled out and died on the spot. Okay, of the ones that survived, obviously they weren't having children, so therefore you won't find too many pure blacks in the Middle East. The condition of slaves in South America and Brazil especially was just horrific. So of course slavery is evil, and it is an absolute blessing that we abolished it. But a little bit of understanding, if you understand that America treated slaves better than any other civilization before it treated its slaves, as evil as it was. And it was white Christian male, first in England, later in America, that gave the world abolitionism, gave the world the gift of the intellectual arguments that ended slavery in the Western world. Yes, it's regretful we participated in it at all, but the fact is that the story of slavery is actually one of the greatest speaks highly of Western civilization because of those handful of facts. So given all of that, why do so many people, a lot of people think America's the only country in the world who had slaves. Like, it's completely backwards. We have been programmed to hate ourselves. And that's just one little anecdote. I could literally give you thousands of anecdotes like that. I'll give you another one real quick. We talked about movie houses and TV shows. You go back 50 years and watch like Leave It to Beaver or these kinds of shows. The straight white male at the head of the household was always portrayed as strong, reliable, dependable. When things went down, you went to him. He was able to solve problems. More modern times, Homer Simpson is a complete buffoon, and Marge runs the house. You got Al Bundy, a complete failure. So the whole kind of situation narrative, where we're constantly being bombarded that things that are good and things that are great about America, it's flipped on its head. It's taught to be, its citizens are taught to be evil. And this is that step one of the demoralization of American citizen. They don't believe that they are fundamentally good. They think they're fundamentally evil. So certainly not the majority, but an increasing minority, sadly. And this is going to come to a head. Now, why is this relevant to this question? The question says, Australia seems like a pretty good part to be in. If America fails, there is nowhere else to go. Australia and New Zealand will fall like that. Indonesia will decide, Australia, with its 20 million people and vast natural resources, sound good. Let's take that. Maybe it'll be China who says they want to take it. Maybe it'll be some other place that says they want to take it. You're going to be able to move to Singapore. There's no chance. China will take over the rest of Asia instantaneously if there's no America around to maintain balance and order. So I want everyone to understand, America is the last stand. There's nowhere else to run. There is nowhere else to go. If America falls, the whole world falls into a darkness of tyranny and evilness that will last bare minimum decades, probably centuries, and maybe even millennia. So as we see this attack on America, I really hope everybody understands, no matter where you are in the world, root for America. It is the key to your salvation, no matter where you are in the world, unless you advocate that totalitarian system and want to live under it. Hi, Max. Thank you very much for your perspective. Your channel has very quickly become one of my favorites because of how simply you break down complicated matters and the contrarian point of view you hold. Could you please do a video on the US-China trade war and why Trump doesn't like China devaluing its currency? And yes, I'm a big fan of the spreadsheets, so feel free to use them and explain things as they simplify life a lot. So for those of you who don't know, in a recent video, I offered to make a spreadsheet which helps you calculate your wealth, not just in dollars, but in gold and in hamburgers and in real estate and in all these things, so that as different currencies and different things fluctuate, you have multiple ways of looking at your wealth. It's an unbelievably valuable tool, and the overwhelming response was that people wanted me to make that and give that away to people. So I am going to do that. Be patient with me, and I will try and get that done in the next few weeks. To your question, could you do a video on the US-China trade war and why Trump doesn't like China devaluing its currency? I won't do a video on it, but I'll do it here. Well, I guess this is a video, so I am doing a video on this. All right, the simple, easy solution, the base level, the one that kind of anyone who's done economics, whatever, kind of gets, is this. And then I'll do a more complicated one in a moment. Is this: when a country devalues their currency, what that means, you got America and China trading, and let's say China devalues its currency. What that means is, for America, buying Chinese products just got cheaper, which means more money will flow to China, and China devalues its currency because their products got cheaper, more attractive, and we'll buy more of their stuff. At the same time, for the Chinese person buying American stuff, American prices effectively got higher because their currency got devalued. And so now China buys less of our exports, and it creates trade imbalances. And so it looks very good for China in the meantime because they're getting their businesses grow, their exports grow, they have a high employment. Meanwhile, the United States get high unemployment, and so the numbers look bad for America. We lose skills. We have 50,000 manufacturing plants shut down over the last 20 years, and that is skills leaving the country. The people who knew how to work in those factories have lost those skills have atrophied, haven't kept up to technology, and if a new factory is built, they have to be retrained from scratch. So all those kinds of things. There's a lot of long-term benefits. Now, there is a benefit to America and a disadvantage to the United States. The benefit is that for America, we get a lot of cheap stuff. We don't need to be as productive because our cost of living went down because we're getting all this Chinese stuff. Likewise, the downside of the China is for things that they do need to import, it gets more expensive, the cost of living goes up. So there is two sides to that coin, and people can debate till the cows come home about which side of that coin you actually want to be on. And it's a tough one and very debatable. So we'll leave that there, but now I'll get you the actual more important one. Is kind of tying in with my last comment, with the last question, kind of about the KGB and the destruction of America. America is the pin that holds together the current system of more democracy than any other time in history, more freedoms than any other time in history, less tyranny than any other time in history. It is a thorn in the side of the sociopaths who want to run the world and control everybody and enslave humanity. Ding, 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 China, people with leftist leanings, socialist countries, communist countries, etc. And so there has been a war going on for half a century. The Cold War never died. In fact, I'll give you this little nugget. The Soviet Union was allowed to collapse by decision of the people who wanted to implement more socialism and eventually destroy America. That may sound bizarre. At the end of 1989, it's a bizarre thing. 1989 occurs, the Berlin Wall falls, the Soviet Empire crumbles by 91. Every single person on the planet acknowledges that leftist ideology is a complete failure. And yet, every single country on the planet has a hard left turn towards it. It's a truly bizarre thing. Here's why it was allowed to fall. People were not willing to allow, as long as America had this boogeyman of better red than dead, or this evil, this Cold War going on. We don't want to be like the communists. It's communist versus capitalism. We were too vigilant, not allowing our government to turn left and implement a lot of the leftist agenda. And so they decided, look, the boogeyman of nuclear war is kind of dying down. It's not scaring people as much. So the better red than dead argument stopped working. Simultaneously, it started hurting them because people were vigilant to not allow our political system to move too far left. The strategic decision was made to allow the left, the Soviet stronghold to collapse, make it appear as though leftism was defeated once and for good, and that would allow people to take their eyes off their own government and let them move left. That has proved correct, but they also wanted something else. They decided we still need a boogeyman. We're going to lose our better red than dead boogeyman, nuclear annihilation. We need a boogeyman, and they came up with two. Environmentalism. Okay, the world's going to end. You're going to have to live in bubbles. And then in the 80s, I think it was 80s, 90s, it was you're going to have to walk around in a spacesuit on the beach because you're going to burn alive. Later, I think 10 years later, that was proved ridiculous. So they went with acid rain. You're going to get acid rain. It's going to kill you. The next was chlorofluorocarbons causing greenhouse gases, causing temperatures to go through the roof. Global warming, that got proved false. Now they've recycled into climate change. Doesn't matter if there's a warm day or a hot day, they're right. It's proof that we need to implement socialism. So that was one of the boogeymen that they came up with and have been funding and forcing down our throats despite the fact it's complete nonsense ever since. The other boogeyman that they came up with was terrorism. And you'll know a lot less understood now than maybe 5-10 years ago, but you know that Al-Qaeda, you know that Osama bin Laden, all originally funded by the CIA. The people who are in control, the leftists in control of the certain parts of American infrastructure and governments were funding terrorism to create that boogeyman to implement more leftism in the US. So all those kinds of things are happening. So underneath this trade war and this, this devaluing currency, Trump is very, very good at speaking in terms that the masses can understand. I guess he spent his entire life on construction sites, blue-collar workers, down-to-earth people. I believe Trump is very, very smart and knows everything that I've just said. Nothing I've said is new to him, I don't believe. But he only talks about a handful of bullet points that anybody can understand in slogan form. So it's a leftist mentality. It's like from each according to their need, their ability to each according to their need. It's a slogan. It sounds good. You investigate it, it's moronic. But it sounds good. And Trump is very good at being on our side, I will say, on America's side, at only talking about things that the masses can understand and in a way they can understand it. And so he's going to talk about China devaluing their currency because he can explain that in a few sentences. The longer 50-year history of the subversion of the US through academia and whatever else, the media, he will talk about those things in ways that people understand it, but he's not going to go through the whole conspiracy theory. He never does it, but I think he understands it. Hope that helps on that one. Crypto integrations. Crypto, I think, pretty sure you are my most prolific commenter and question asker, and I appreciate that, so thank you so much. Any recommendations on how to explain what is happening in the world to your child? How would you advise your child to respond to their brainwashed peers with differing opinions? I teach my daughter everything you talk about, but I worry about how she can respond to other peers whose parents have way different understanding and perspectives. I want to protect my daughter's self-esteem since what I tell her goes against what mainstream says. It's a phenomenal question. I love the word. I want to protect my daughter's self-esteem. Brilliant. Ties in perfectly with my last two answers to the previous questions. It's critically important that the demoralization of the US is an active campaign by many different organizations and many different industries, media, academia, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And your job as a parent is to protect your child's self-esteem. Have appreciation for the history of where you come from, the men that fought and died to create these freedoms, these liberties in the capitalist system. Have appreciation for the intellectual genius of Locke, Adam Smith, etc. It's a critically important, that is the number one defense. A couple of videos back, I think it was my last video, I talked about they're fundamentally broken people that are in Antifa. It's because their self-esteem has been annihilated. They believe themselves, their history, their culture, their race, their sexual orientation, the color of their skin, everything about them is evil because they've been taught that they're evil. It's seeped into their head, and they now have such self-hatred. They're such filled with that anger, they go ahead and do just the most evil, dastardly things the world has ever known and advocate for communism or collectivism or whatever it is they're advocating for. It is all based on self-esteem. So fantastic question. Otherwise, side note as well, I have a 5-year-old son, and it's a question very dear to my heart. So I love the question. Now let me try and give you some kind of an answer. Yes, focus on self-esteem. 2, you can do that on a daily basis as you teach them history, economics, whatever. And I will give a shout out to a channel. My 5-year-old knows more about World War II, World War I, War of Independence, the Civil War, than most 18-year-olds. So there's a YouTube channel called Oversimplified. And it is like cartoon history by quite a funny narrator. And it is an absolutely brilliant channel. And for adults, it's brilliant. You're going to learn a lot. An adult's going to watch it once. My kid tends to watch each episode like 30, 40, 50 times. And he is just drinking up history. And that history is the foundation for the self-esteem, being proud of where you come from. Because Lord knows he's going to get taught about all the horrible things we've done. And I'm not saying we didn't do them. We have done horrible things. Just with regards to America, with 300 million people. Name one person that's a saint that's never done no wrong. Forget about it. 300 million people, you can talk to an enormous amount of instances where wrong was done. We got the George Floyd homicide just recently as a perfect example. Of course, bad things happen. They get taught the bad things. Make sure you teach them the good things. And another thing that really sinks this in, and I've found it very, very powerful. What I do every couple of months, I go and get a big piece of chalk, drag a big long timeline down our driveway, and we sit there and we fill in the timeline of everything he's learned. And we'll put the War of Independence, we'll put the Civil War, we'll put World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, Cold War. We do Egyptians, Christ, Muhammad, Abraham, we do Gandhi, we do MLK Jr., and we map out everything on that timeline every couple of months on the driveway. And here's the thing, it's this visual representation creates the perception of time so that you understand that there's different phases, different people had different ethics at different days. Like there's arguments that like Thomas Jefferson was evil because he had a slave or numerous slaves. And to judge someone of today's standards from hundreds of years ago is just plain silly. And that's a great way to defend against that. And that visual connection is super powerful. Another one I do almost always is whatever we're talking about, I almost always take it back to a map. And I show my son on the map where it happened, when it happened. It's another visual link. So between the storytelling that I give him, the visual of the timeline and the visual of the maps, those 3 things I've just noticed with him, things just stick, and his perception of time and reality just seems to be spot on. And so they're my 3 bits of advice of how to help with your daughter's self-esteem and understanding what's going on in the world. Are you still expecting deflation? The answer is yes. Second half of this year, I am expecting deflation to kick off again in earnest. But deflation, what I mean is cratering demand and with it falling prices. So the literal definition of inflation or deflation is an inflating of the money supply, which would mean printing. Deflating of the money supply would mean the taking away of money, the evaporating of money. Now that actually does happen too. So the Fed will be printing money, yes, but when they print the money, it is created as debt. And as that money the money literally springs into existence when the money is created, but it's created as debt. When you pay the debt off, the money evaporates and it goes away. Also, if the entity that is bankrupt and cannot pay it back and that debt is written off, that money is again evaporated. So you'll have the Fed printing, and then you'll have the money being evaporated as loans can't be paid back. So we're going to have this balance of inflation, deflation. But overall, in the second half of this year and through into 2021, I believe you will see stock market and real estate prices go down quite severely. So yes, I'm still expecting that. I have been sharing this. Oh yeah, I just want to let you guys know about this. It's not actually a question. It could be 6, 7 years ago. I don't quite remember. I created a video called "Will a Private Police Force Work Better?" Detroit says yes. If you want to do this, guys, go to youtube.com/Success Council. You'll go to my channel, or just click on my icon, my face below this video. Of course, after you've clicked subscribe and like this button and hit the like button. Click on my face, you'll go through to my channel. Go up to the magnifying glass, or it'll either be a magnifying glass or the word search. Click on that and look for Private Police Force. You will go back and you'll find the video that's about 6 or 7 years old about how a private police force might work. And I've had several comments from people come up in the last few days, i.e. I've been sharing this video for a couple of years now. Right now it should be shared the most with what is going on. Minnesota, are you paying attention to what this company did in Detroit? So it's an argument for private police forces, not public police forces. I will want to just say, in the context of this leftist hysteria, defund police without any plan to recreate anything, that's just part of the destruction of America agenda that they have. I don't advocate that in any way, shape, or form. But allowing private police forces to flourish, such as in this case, can be a very, very powerful thing, and that's a great video. Feel free to go and check it. I'll put in the link in the description as well, so you don't have to go searching too far for it. No, I didn't read this question. Great content as always. I have a question about real estate. Many people around me say the interest is very low, so we can easily buy a house now at the top. Here we have a 20 to 30-year mortgage with very low interest rates. Even if the value of my house drops, they don't care. Are they right? What point do they miss? They are right, and it's a very, very valid point. And that's what the Fed's trying to do. You're lowering interest rates, you're making houses more affordable, you're allowing people to go deeper into debt than they could because we have artificially low interest rates. The problem is artificially low interest rates, left long enough, will destroy a society, let alone the economy. And it will drastically increase the wealth gap. In zero interest rate environments, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And so basically it can't last forever. Eventually, interest rates will have to return. It could have to be tomorrow, it could be a little bit longer, or next year, 10 years. Look, I'm saying it has to happen. And so when those interest rates go up, all of a sudden, well, granted, these things are fixed for 20, 30 years. So yeah, this person might be able to survive and may be able to make their payments. However, can they sell their property? Can they trade their property? Can they get in and out of anything? For the homeowner, it's the least relevant because let's say it's 10 years from now and property prices are half. I'm not saying, oh, that's my prediction, but let's just say, well, you sell your property for half, but then the house you move into, you buy for half. So as a homeowner, it's not a big deal. But for the investment class, that's all the apartment blocks out there, all the people who buy houses and rent them out long-term or Airbnb, it's a significant portion of dwellings. When they are not getting a return because demand is low, people have lost jobs, people can't pay rent, all of a sudden that part of the housing market gets destroyed. In addition to that, when that happens, now the entire mortgage industry is caught up in it and is destroyed. Banks are a lot more scared. They are way less likely to lend out to other people. It happens in an environment where lots of jobs are getting lost. And you do see, even the residential market, even the properties that are most suited for primary residence, they still get smashed as well. And so it may be worth their while to wait and buy the property for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. That for if you live in Sydney or Vancouver, you're laughing at that. Maybe buy it for $500,000, $1 million cheaper, and you will almost certainly still be able to get the interest rates of today then too. So but anyway, they are right. Their argument is compelling, but there's an alternative argument which is equally compelling, I think. This is in response to a video I made talking about that forbearance is about to come. It was given with a 3 or 6 and with a 12-month extension. So sometime in the next sort of 9 months, all the people who have been put on forbearance, which is about 10% of mortgage holders in America, will come true. To which G-Money replied, forbearance is able to be tacked onto the backside of the mortgage and will be the route nearly all of them take. That is true. So when you go to forbearance, you still owe the money. It's not like you just don't get to pay those few months and that's it. You still owe it. It's just the bank is not giving you penalties or charging interest on the fact that you didn't pay it then. But what they can do is tack it at the end of the mortgage, and you can just like pay it off and pay the extra 4 payments that you miss now in like 4 years, 30 years or 20 years or however long you've got left on your mortgage. That is true. And if this was just a short-term thing, then you could be right. But people are scared. The velocity of money has crashed. People are saving. And the Fed can buy some months with forbearance and money printing and whatever, but it's not, pardon me, it's not the end of it. And so it's my opinion that look, if the Fed prints $1 quadrillion, they can save the stock market, they can save the real estate market, they can do everything, and prices of everything skyrockets. Yeah, they can do all those things. But it will destroy the currency in the same breath. In my opinion, they can't save the currency and the markets. If they save the markets, they will destroy the currency, which end up coming back and destroying the markets as well anyway. Or the markets will go, because there's just too much debt floating in the system and it needs to be liquidated out. Plus, you've got a whole bunch of things, demographics happening. I've talked about it a lot of times, I'm not going to go into it right now. But there's a lot of things happening which sustains the argument that despite the Fed's printing, and there is a lot of it, and it is a compelling argument, that deflation will win out this time. I think that's the one I started with. So guys, I hope that was useful. Please go ahead, subscribe. Videos like this and lots of other cool things coming up. As well as that spreadsheet. That spreadsheet that I mentioned earlier. It's a really cool tool that you will want, and you will get that in a video soon. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss out on that. Smash the like button and let me know what you would like to see in the next video, what topic you'd like me to cover, and go ahead and ask any questions that you have below. I will get to them as soon as I can. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.